Hey everyone, my name's Freya Graff and I'm a Yoni mapping therapist and holistic sex educator and coach. And I would love to chat to you about wands and how the fuck to use them, because I have a lot of clients who come to me, maybe we do a Yoni mapping session and we do some internal vaginal massage and de-armouring, and then they go out and they get themselves a tool like this. Often they're called the Cervical Serpent. And then they come to me and they're just like, oh, I actually don't know where to start. What is the aim? How am I meant to be approaching this? And can you tell me a bit about where to start? So basically I've got my wand. You can see there's different ends on it. This is a bit of an outdated version. I actually might pop a link to my favorite one, which is called the Cervix Serpent, and it's a bit more of an updated model, and it's got like a bulbous end on one end and then an end a bit like this. And realistically, I'd say you can use either end for whatever you like. It's personal preference and maybe the dimensions of your yoni. I think they do say that the bulbous end is for the cervical de-armouring and the ridged, bumpy, narrower end is for G-spot stimulation. But I actually use it the other way around a lot of the time. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. You do you. But I just wanted to chat a little bit about how to go about like a general yoni massage internally and what de-armouring is, what the idea behind it is. And then I'll go into a bit more specific kind of tutorial on how to do a cervical de-armouring internal yoni massage with the wand or with a Cervix Serpent. So basically, you might have heard the term being bandied around: yoni de-armouring, cervix de-armouring, vaginal de-armouring. Basically, that means the removal or the release of tension, trauma, holding patterns, layers of armor, basically physical and also energetic and emotional, that we kind of layer and layer and layer within our bodies, within our yonis in particular, in response to traumas or emotions or experiences that weren't particularly honoring for our vaginas. So to give you an example, because it sounds a little bit vague, de-armouring and armor inside your vagina, but it can be an emotional kind of armoring, but it can also turn into a more physical armoring, because if we're storing tension, physical tension, say knots or, like contraction in our pelvic floor, that can then, if it's chronic, turn into scar tissue. And if we're holding emotions and memories, which we do inside our bodies, and especially things like trauma from childbirth or intense medical intervention during childbirth, experiences of abortion or miscarriage or experiences of sexual abuse, all the way through to just maybe consensual or semi-consensual sexual experiences that just aren't super honoring and are actually maybe a bit aggressive or a little bit unconscious, when we're not connected to our body or connected to the other person. So I'm talking like hard and fast, pounding way too deep, that kind of sex, when you don't want it, not ideal. And that can create trauma in the body. It can create tension. So the trauma can turn into tension and contraction. It can turn into scar tissue or knots. And these places inside the vagina that are storing the memory or the emotion or the trauma can hold on to that for a really long time, and then that can turn into a physical manifestation as well. So when we do yoni massage or internal mapping, de-armouring, we're actually removing and helping provide an opportunity to release the trauma that's being stored or the tension that's being stored. And these words can be quite interchangeable. So if I say, we're storing trauma or we're storing some tension or we're storing an emotion, like often they're the same thing, or they are all in the one spot, or result of each other. So not to get too bogged down in that though, basically when we have experiences that our body doesn't love, we then hang on to that, we store it, doing the Yoni de-armouring or cervical de-armouring, which gives, presence and focus and energy towards that space. It gives a physical palpation and physical stimulation, which then will create space for that spot to release tension and physically start to unwind. And in that process of physically unwinding and releasing tension, the memories or the emotions or trauma that are trapped in that spot will also start to release. So when we've got the trauma that's being stored there, it can be quite painful, either physically or emotionally or energetically. So our body wants to numb ourselves to that to protect us from experiencing it fully and feeling it. So it creates layers of armoring, which can be numbness or it could be scar tissue in something physical. So releasing the armor bit by bit by bit in a really gentle way that's intentional and very present with our bodies is a beautiful way to start releasing some of the shit that doesn't serve us and the crap that we're storing in our yonis from, years gone by, and start allowing more spaciousness, more softness into the tissues as well. So physically, we're actually inviting more circulation, more relaxation, more pleasure. And then it can also be releasing things like shame and guilt and crappy limiting beliefs around sexuality and genitals. So all of that, we store that within us. And the de-armoring process can be shedding that. It can be releasing that and taking the power away from those emotions like shame, basically. So anyway, you can use a tool like this. It's great if it has a curve in it. This is a longer one because it's designed for the cervix. You can get shorter ones as well, but this is kind of like, the one that I'll link to, it's a catch-all because you can use it for the G-spot. You can use it for just de-armoring the walls of the yoni and the more shallow areas. And then it's also got the length to be able to reach the cervix if you want to then graduate to some cervical de-armoring. So firstly, if you're just going to start with a general de-armoring or internal yoni massage, you can use the wand. Say we're going to use this end and use this as the handle. And you can just start quite shallowly, so just inside the entrance of the vagina. Just insert it with your body's permission. It's important to check in with your body about whether it's ready to be penetrated. It doesn't often get a choice in the matter. So if it's okay with your body to proceed, then just inserting it and warm it up first. That's a hot tip, actually. Excuse the pun. Definitely warm it up because the glass gets freezing. Pop it in like a glass of hot water or something. And then the yoni will really appreciate that. And then insert it and just move your way around in like a circular motion all the way around the walls. Start, just a little bit inside the entrance, and working your way deeper as you go. Kind of do laps around the yoni. So imagine this clitoris up here, anus down here, and you've inserted and you're kind of just working your way around both sides and the back with the bottom and up. So do some laps. Really, it's not super important the order that you do things in, but I like to start shallow just to ease into it and to work my way around the walls, avoiding 12 o'clock up the top near the clitoris. Behind that is the G-spot. So I sort of avoid that just to begin with because that is a particularly charged area. It can be very pleasurable and erogenous, and I like to warm up the other areas of the yoni first and release tension there before I move to the G-spot, which is the urethral sponge. That's a whole other video. I won't go into that. But basically warming up the walls, sort of palpating them. So you can use the wand, say this is just the surface inside the walls of your vagina. You can just do strokes like this. You can go in circles. You can just gently hold on a point and push, and you could pulse or you could just hold it. You can go up and down or side to side. You can do whatever you like, basically, and just experiment with pressure and with movement. You might find areas of tension. In fact, you almost definitely will find areas of tension that are quite uncomfortable, might be a bit painful. And I like to just remind people of the difference between good pain and bad pain, I suppose. Like, you know, when you get a massage and your muscles are tense and the pressure is pretty uncomfortable, but you're like, no, but it's good. I know it's doing a really good thing. It's releasing tension. That's why it's sore. That's good pain, you know. You definitely don't want to push too hard into it. The vagina, it's tough as fuck, but it's also, you know, something you don't want to overwhelm with like intense pain. So gauge the pain by feeling into whether it feels helpful and like it's releasing tension, or it's just so painful that your muscles are going to be contracting and clenching against it. It can handle a decent amount of pressure, but there's no need also, because a little goes a long way in this space that never gets massaged or touched really. So it'll appreciate any sort of gentle massage, because it will start to bring fresh blood flow to the area and therefore better circulation. It'll flush out stagnant energy in blood and help release and relax. So as you're going, you're releasing tension. It'll also feel potentially like more muscular and deeper pain or nerves. Whereas if you're feeling like that surface level skin kind of irritation or burning sensation, like if it's the actual walls and that tissue that's sort of painful, then that's not what we want. You know, the kind of discomfort that you might experience that's, you know, very normal is more of a deep muscular pain. And definitely use lube so that there's none of that friction based kind of burning skin pain. We don't want that. Anyway, so you're going to work your way around the walls. I would say that there might be emotions that surface, or a memory perhaps, or maybe just an urge to laugh or giggle or cry or scream. You might feel anger arise, or you might feel a deep sadness. You may not know what the emotion is all about or what it's attached to, and that's not important to understand that, to be honest. It's, you know, if it's being felt, it's come up to be felt and released, not, you know, scrutinized and looked into and go, oh, what's that about? Oh my gosh, oh no. Don't worry about it. Your body's super clever and super wise. And if you're holding yourself in a loving space and you're giving your body an opportunity to let those emotions and memories surface after being locked down in your tissues for so long, then, you know, you obviously feel safe enough for that to actually happen. And it's important to just be present with it. Don't shy away from it or shut it down. Don't judge it or make it wrong. Don't analyze it too much either. Sometimes you may have an actual memory or some traumatic experience come up, and you'll understand that that's what it's all about. And sometimes you'll just have an emotion, and it's not necessary to understand where that's coming from or whether it's attached to a specific time or memory or experience, because your body's just releasing it as it comes up anyway. The other thing I will say is breath and sound are really beautiful vehicles for release. So if you're feeling a memory or an emotion surface, if you're getting hot flushes or shakes, or, you know, there's some kind of visceral bodily response to this thing being released, use your breath, use sound, let out a sigh on the exhale, open up your jaw, give it a bit of a massage even. You know, I like open it up in as though to yawn, because that really stretches out the jaw, and the jaw is very connected to the pelvic floor muscles. So, you know, your throat and your jaw, opening them up because they're so connected to the vagina, that's going to assist the process of releasing the tension and the trauma down below. So opening up your mouth, letting out sound, screaming, getting really like guttural, or just like sighing gently. Everyone's going to have a different experience, and really just trust your body and what's coming up and out, and trying to allow that without too much judgment or feeling too silly, because it's part of the process and it's really helpful. Like, you can do this stuff without making a lot of sound or having a big cathartic time of it, of course. But if stuff is stuck and stuff's feeling really like, ugh, yuck, just making a bit of sound and opening up the jaw, opening up the mouth and the throat can be super helpful as a vehicle for like getting that up and out and releasing it. So, as you're going, you might feel some tension physically or a bit of discomfort. That is really normal. You might also feel pleasure or discover areas that are pleasurable, which is also a bonus and great. Usually when you're kind of doing an intentional de-armoring session, especially to begin with, there might be more numbness and pain than there is pleasure, and that's really normal. We often numb ourselves to the pain that we're feeling in certain situations, either physically or emotionally. And then if you've got numbness, you kind of have to remove the numbness and then go back through pain before it turns into pleasure. So it's a bit of a journey here, and pain and numbness isn't a bad thing. They can all be reversed. You just kind of have to traverse your way back to pleasure. And that's why de-armoring can be so powerful as well. And the more you do it, the more you release each time, and the more familiar with this whole kind of inner landscape that you become. And the more you release the idea that it's shameful or dirty or wrong or weird to be touching yourself and massaging this part of your body. So the more you're giving it loving focus and attention and putting energy towards that area, the more that sends the message that it's not shameful and dirty, and you are worthy, and you do deserve this amount of time and energy and presence to be spent on you and the Yoni. And it kind of sends this really self-loving, nurturing, respectful message to your body that, you're worthy and you're lovable, and here I am, I'm committed to you, I'm doing this de-armoring, I'm spending time with you, I'm spending time touching you and inside you, massaging you, tending to you. So it's a really beautiful act of self-love and self-care, and I'd recommend doing it regularly, because each time you shed more layers and you go deeper, and eventually there might be less and less of the pain and all the numbness or that sort of crunchy stuff, and more pleasure. So finally, I just want to chat to you a bit about the cervix. And if you're going to continue doing the de-armoring work, you will eventually get to the cervix. It's a little bit, I sort of recommend doing the general Yoni massage and de-armoring first a few times, and then kind of moving towards cervical stuff down the track. Just because it's it's deep, it's connected to the heart physiologically, but also in sexual reflexology, it is the heart point of the woman in the body. It's also the most innervated part of the Yoni. So it's got 3 pairs of nerves that run through it and connect to it and connect it to like the whole body. I mean, the vagus nerve that's a whole other topic, but if you know anything about the vagus nerve, you know that it's a big deal, and the cervix is connected to the vagus nerve, which then obviously means that the cervix is kind of linked with the whole nervous system. So it's a deep area. It can also be a massive hotspot for storing trauma and being very armored. And because it's not often touched or massaged or given much attention, it can take a lot longer to de-armor this place and to eventually graduate to feeling pleasure from it. And so to give you an example of why the cervix might armor itself, it's all of the same things as I just talked about in terms of traumatic experiences, but also, have you ever had sex where it feels like the penis is going in way too deep? It's almost coming up into your organs and you're like, whoa, or that really pounding, hard, fast sex that's just like, feels like it's going to puncture up into your belly, it's hitting the end of the vagina, it's hitting up against the cervix. And that sort of sex, if you're not ready for it and you're not fully aroused and your body's not down, then it's hugely damaging, and the cervix hates that. And so it's like, fuck this, I'm gonna like layer all of these, you know, layers of armor to protect myself, and I'm going to numb myself out because like I hate being treated like this. I need a bloody helmet to stop this like pounding unconscious sex. And so it gets, you know, it puts those layers of armoring on as a defense mechanism. And so a lot of the time cervixes can be very numb or very painful and triggered quite easily. So the de-armoring of that is slightly more advanced. And I would recommend doing the general Yoni stuff for a while first. Then if you want to learn how to actually recognize if you're touching the cervix, I would recommend using your fingers first to get an idea, because it's like if you're using a wand, the wand can't detect what it's touching. Your hand's holding it, you can't really feel if you're touching the cervix, and the cervix might not know, your brain might not have linked what it actually feels like for the cervix to be touched. So to have that biofeedback, it's great to use a finger, insert it. Sometimes difficult to reach depending on how long your arms are and how long your fingers are and how long your vaginal canal is and where you're at in your cycle, meaning your cervix is sitting at a different point. But generally, if you squat or you have your legs up over your shoulders kind of thing, shortens the vaginal canal. Squatting is probably the easiest way to go, or sitting on a toilet or something, so that it's shortening the vaginal canal, and you can pop a finger in and feel as deep as you can towards the back. So it's sort of right at the end of the vaginal canal, and it feels a little bit like the tip of your nose. So it's like firm, but a bit squishy. It's kind of round with like an indentation in the center. So a bit donut-like, as though the donut had kind of closed its center and there's still a little, either a hole or a line if you've been pregnant before. And it will feel, some people freak out and think, like when they feel it and think, oh my God, I've got a tumor, or what's this bulbous kind of protuberance that's hanging out at the back of my yoni? That's the cervix, and it's important that you find it with your fingers and identify it, and then give it a little push, give it a little wiggle, be gentle and respectful, obviously, but if you can kind of play around with it and put some pressure on it and wiggle it, then your body, your actual cervix, like yes, you'll be able to feel it with your finger, but the actual cervix will feel itself being touched. And so your brain will create that connection and go, oh, that's what the cervix feels like. Okay, I've got a point of reference now. I'm going to be able to recognize it and identify when it's being touched. So get a gauge on what your cervix actually feels like to be touched. And then when you use a wand, you're going to be able to recognize more easily if the wand is in the right spot and if you're actually touching it. And so then with the de-armouring of the cervix, it's very similar. I would start with the rest of the yoni to warm up the space and just move slowly towards it, as though you're kind of honoring, you know, walking down a red carpet very slowly and bowing a lot and kind of approaching with respect and honor, because the cervix is like royalty. And then you can say, like, this is the cervix and the os, which is the entrance to the cervix. You can kind of put pressure just directly and pulse, or just hold on the os. You can kind of circle around the cervix. You can push on the sides of it. You can kind of go like that. I mean, you just want to gently massage and stimulate it. You don't want to knock it about too much, but you just want to acquaint yourself with it and give it a thorough kind of massage and just a bit of pressure. And, you know, that might feel quite painful. It might be super numb as well to begin with. And like I said, you've got to move through the numbness and move through the pain before you'll start to actually allow space and awaken the pleasure, because pleasure in these spaces is often something we need to learn, because if you haven't had a pleasurable experience from day one, and you've had some that were either neutral or not so pleasant, then the body has kind of learnt that this space equals this unpleasant sensation, or this space equals this meh. So you're actually creating new neural pathways, and you're waking up nerve endings, and you're kind of teaching the body and the brain to feel pleasure from these areas that it may not have felt pleasure from before. And they are all capable of feeling pleasure. You have the capacity to feel pleasure and have a deep orgasmic experience. Everyone does. But it's not necessarily something that's going to automatically happen, you know? And so be patient with this. It may feel daunting in the beginning and feel like you've got a long way to go, or fuck this, it's so numb. I feel, how do I know if I'm getting anywhere? Or like, oh, this is so painful, it makes me feel sick, and it's you know, a bit disheartening. But you are not alone by any means, and I would encourage you to just be patient with yourself and just stay consistent with it, because it's only a matter of time, if you do this sort of thing regularly, that it will start to release some of that armoring, and some of those layers will be removed, and it will become more and more sensitized, and pleasurable. Who knows, maybe you'll have a cervical orgasm, but don't try to get there, because there's nothing more elusive than an orgasm that you are trying to make happen. So it's a happy accident and a total bonus if it does, but don't make that the goal. Yeah, so I think that's all I'd like to say about that. Is there anything else that I am missing? I don't think so. I think, yeah, I mean, get in touch if you have any questions, or if you use the wand and you come up against anything crunchy or that you're unsure of. But really, overall, just trust your body, trust your intuition, listen for feedback from your body, and just sort of stay present with yourself throughout it, you know. I mean, there's lots more that I would love to say on it, but then I'm going to turn this into an entire coaching session, which it is not. It's meant to just be a quick tutorial, and I've gone so far over time. But yeah, you can always get in touch with me. You can head to my website to read some blog posts about this sort of thing, and also I offer coaching packages and journeys if you want to go deeper and have a really specific kind of individualized game plan that we can work through together. I'm here for it. So I hope this was helpful. Chuck some questions down below if you have any, or feedback if this was helpful. Thanks so much, guys. Bye.